one of the many exciting things about joining Live was being able to come here and play in front of a Spanish crowd, especially on a level of event and level of competition that I hadn't really yet enjoyed, right? I've been able to play events in Spain.
Here in the beautiful Valderrama, which some say is the European Augusta. It's so special. There's so much history here. There's so much Spanish history here.
Well, it has so much history behind. It's only a 50 years old club, but so much has happened through the years. I mean, we had the Ryder Cup, we had World Gold Championships, and now we have Live. It's
very exciting, and really, if there was ever a place to get my first win, I feel like this would be the perfect week.
When this wind at this golf course is so difficult that it's equally stressful no matter when or where you're playing it. But it was fun. It's always fun to be back home and be with the home crowd. It's always a joy to have this many people supporting me all day. It's so much fun.
What the heck course were you playing today?
I don't know.
It's brutal out there.
It is brutal. I don't know. I just made everything I looked at, Jerry. You have those days. I suppose this was one of those days for me, so I relish it. I really enjoyed it. Every time I stood over a putt, just felt like I could make it, and you don't get days like that too often, or certainly I don't. So, I relished in it, and I managed to hit a lot of good shots as well. So it was a special day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to NewsWire. I'm Mike Blewitt, heading up the show today as Craig Mish is still covering the MLB All-Star Game, which resulted in another victory for the American League last night. They've won 10 of the last 11 games. The game goes over last night, the total of 7.5, a 5-3 final on the heels of a Jarren Duran home run. The game-winning homer by Duran earns him the All-Star Game MVP. The pregame odds on Duran, plus 20,200 to 1. He was listed along with several other players as the longest odds of all the positional players to win the award. It is the Ted Williams Award, so apt that a Red Sox player wins it, and he is the fifth to do so. J.D. Drew, the last to do it in 2008. He joins Pedro Martinez, Roger Clemens, and Carl Yastrzemski as the other Red Sox winners of the All-Star Game MVP. So an unlikely MVP, perhaps, but obviously the big home run nets the American League the 5-3 win. He broke the tie and has that game-winning homer. Pitching still dominant, obviously, as usual. Mason Miller gets the win, Hunter Green with the loss. But pitchers dominant overall, only 15 hits in the game. 8 runs does go over, but not a particularly high-scoring game, the 5-3 final. But good game to watch, kept crisp, kept moving pretty quickly. The game was not into the night as other All-Star games of yesteryear were. So nice game last night for the American League. Moving on, in other news, Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers All-Pro wide receiver, has officially requested a trade after an offseason of unsuccessful attempts to reach an extension, that via Mike Garofalo of the NFL Network. Despite a recent meeting, the Niners haven't been willing to engage in negotiations since May, so Ayuk has respectfully asked out. We saw this. We have been tracking this on SportsGrid for months. We saw it start to really pick up steam around the NFL draft time a couple of months ago, and I think it will remain a story for as long as Ayuk and his representatives choose to push it. The Niners at present, and certainly not for the last few months, have not received an offer requisite of his value. He clearly makes them a championship contending team with him out of the mix and other players in, like rookie wide receiver Ricky Pearsall and others perhaps having to lift up the load at the receiver position or pass catching positions. I don't know that they are quite as clear a contender. They still would be, but I don't know. I think Ayuk really pushes them to another level. We saw when he was neutralized in the Super Bowl and throughout the playoffs, I think that really hurt the Niners' chances of ultimately winning that championship this year. But maybe that's part of the reason for the Niners and Ayuk not really being on the same page. He wants to find greener pastures and more valuable pastures elsewhere, and the Niners still feel like they need him on the team to compete. In WNBA news, we had Maria Marino on yesterday, and the Chicago Sky end up picking up a big victory over their Las Vegas Aces. They were 13.5-point underdogs. Maria and I spoke about it yesterday. Expected the Aces to get the victory, but as we are approaching this break, this month-long break of the Olympics, how motivated would everybody be heading into this month-long hiatus? And the Chicago Sky clearly were. Kennedy Carter, 34 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. She's been a journeyman WNBA player, played in Turkey last season, was drafted by the Dream a few years ago, but really a career game for her yesterday in the Chicago Sky, picking up the big upset victory. Here's some audio on Kennedy Carter's performance yesterday.
I think it's just a testament to everything that I've been through and everything that I've done. I've been overshadowed a lot in my career. People don't understand that I'm a consistent player and I'm going to come out there and be a dog night in and night out. I think now I'm getting comfortable. Spoon's allowing me to make mistakes, keeping me in the game. She's letting me be me, and that's allowing me to – it's benefiting myself, but it's benefiting my team as well. So I just think that it's just my comfortability. I don't see any error out there. I just see red. I want to just go play hard, 100%, whole game.
All right, big victory there for the Chicago Sky. Moving on to the NFL, few storylines here. The Broncos signed Quinn Miners, their offensive lineman, to a 4-year, $80 million extension. He is a Division III player out of Wisconsin Whitewater. He was a third-round draft pick, I believe, possibly second-round draft pick, but nonetheless not a first-day draft pick, but has become an important cog in what they're trying to do offensively. New coach Sean Payton clearly likes him in the mix there. Miners was hospitalized last year with an irregular heartbeat and elevated heart rate, so they obviously feel comfortable with his medicals at this point, and his play certainly to give him this extension as the Broncos are trying to rebuild with Bo Nix and whomever else they would like to try at quarterback. So Devontae Adams' agents called trade speculation, baseless. I think this is the time of year where a lot of people out there are trying to speculate and find roles for people that may be better than where they are now, but it doesn't mean that the teams are having calls about it. Devontae Adams would obviously be sought after by a wide variety of teams, not the least of which are fans that work at this network. New York's Jets fans would love to see Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers reunited again, but unlikely. I think this is an important part of what the Raiders are trying to do with Gardner Minshew and potentially Aiden O'Connell as they fight in what is obviously a very competitive division. I just mentioned the Broncos. The Chiefs are reigning world champs, and we'll see what the Chargers can do in a rebuild mode with Jim Harbaugh. So moving on to other football news, the NFC North, we have Bears signing officially Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze to their rookie contracts. Williams signs a 4-year deal worth nearly $40 million and a $25 million signing bonus. Odunze with a $13 million signing bonus. They'll each be locked in for 4 years, and obviously that 5th-year option looms for these players down the line. J.J. McCarthy remains the only unsigned first-round QB. He's the number 10 overall pick, and he'll eventually sign a 4-year, $21.8 million deal. Those numbers are set, sort of locked in by the CBA, but this likely has something to do with how he is receiving those installments, what those payments look like. The NFL has done a good job over the years making sure that all the rookies get to camp on time and that their contract situations are settled. As we move over to the basketball, back to the hardwood, former college basketball point shaver Stephen Smith out of Arizona State joins Epic in an advisory role. His goal in life now to educate people on the ills of gambling and the dangers of sports betting. I think it's important to have somebody that is an advocate for those that may run into problems, but Stephen Smith was really one of the more famous point shavers in NCAA history when he was at Arizona State, and it famously all got taken down. He spent a year in prison for being part of a racketeering scheme in order to fix games. So he finds himself on the other side of the law now and trying to help people in this advisory role. Adam Silver defending the NBA's new tax apron, the second apron, as it's been colloquially called. There have been a lot of critics. I can only say that Silver has come out and said, we intended to make this league more competitive. I think what you're going to see, and it is clear that this is already occurring, is that we have now seen 6 years in a row a new NBA champion. Frankly, it's 6 teams in 7 years. There's been no repeats in that time. The Warriors have won twice in 7 years. But I think this is what the league wants. They get a ton of buzz around player movement and new teams competing. So the days of the dynasties are likely dwindling, or it would be far more difficult. The Celtics have a real shot to run it back next year. But in a few years, when Jaylen Brown's contract is up, is he going to re-sign with the Celtics? He'll be a 12-year veteran at that point, so teams don't stay together forever. But it would be nice for certain fan bases to be able to keep guys like that together. And I think it just becomes less and less likely now. Klay Thompson staying with the Warriors and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope having to move on, and other Paul George having to move from L.A. to the Sixers. I think that is more likely to be the future of the NBA. When we come back, we'll talk with Gilbert McGregor from the Sporting News on the Olympic hoops.
One of the many exciting things about joining Live was being able to come here and play in front of a Spanish crowd, especially on a level of event and level of competition that I hadn't really yet enjoyed. Right, I've been able to play events in Spain.
Here in the beautiful Valderrama, which some say is the European Augusta. It's so special. There's so much history here. There's so much Spanish history here.
Well, it has so much history behind. It's only a 50-years-old club, but so much has happened through the years. I mean, we had the Ryder Cup, we had World Gold Championships, and now we have Live. It's
very exciting, and really, if there was ever a place to get my first win, I feel like this would be the perfect week.
When this wind at this golf course is so difficult that it's equally stressful no matter when or where you're playing it. But it was fun. It's always fun to be back home and be with the home crowd. It's always a joy to have this many people supporting me all day. It's so much fun.
What the heck course were you playing today?
I don't know.
It's brutal out there.
It is brutal. I don't know. I just made everything I looked at, Jerry. You have those days. I suppose this was one of those days for me, so I relished it. I really enjoyed it. Every time I stood over a putt, just felt like I could make it, and you don't get days like that too often, or certainly I don't. So I relished in it, and I managed to hit a lot of good shots as well. So it was a special day.
And we are back on the grid. Thanks for joining us on NewsWire. Bringing in Gilbert McGregor. We're going to talk all things hoops. Gil, good to see you. He's from the Sporting News, covering all things basketball. We'll start out on the Olympic side of the hardwood today. USA takes on Serbia in just about 45 minutes to warm up, but these teams will match up in the Olympics. They're in the same group. That is the opening round game. The opening game for both teams will be against one another. So I don't know how much you'll see from these teams today, but that's sort of as I've been watching these games, trying to figure out what rotations will look like. I'm sure Steve Kerr is trying to figure it out like the rest of us.
Absolutely. I don't expect either of these teams to show too much of their hands, considering they'll be playing against each other again in about 11 days. But one of the big things that's important for these warm-up exhibition games is figuring out the rotations. Team USA tweaked the starting lineup ahead of the exhibition against Australia on Monday, and I think they liked what they saw. I know Joel Embiid is still struggling to find his way. There's a little bit of a subplot there between Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic in this game. So it'll be interesting to see if Steve Kerr goes with him again. We saw Anthony Edwards kind of come into his own, and I'm expecting Steph Curry to figure it out. You know, he demands so much defensive attention, but he hasn't really gone off like we're used to him going off. So I think that's something I'll keep my eye on in this one. Maybe we'll see some other tweaks in the starting lineup as they try to perfect things as they head to Paris.
Yeah, it was clear at the end of the game against Australia the other day. I know some people, it raised eyebrows that the game was tight late, but it was clear that the five that were on the floor at the end of the game would likely not be the five on the floor in a tight game during the Olympics. Is that fair to say?
I think that is fair to say, Mike. And it's interesting because Tyrese Halliburton ended up making big shots for Team USA to kind of allow them to hold Australia off in that one. But I think the biggest thing that they want to clean up, regardless of who's on the floor, their turnovers are what allowed the Boomers back into the game. They were up by about 24 points, Team USA was, in the beginning of the second half, and they just really played sloppy basketball. And that's why the game was closer than it probably should have been. So I would look to them to maybe try and clean up the turnovers and be a little more focused, you know, as they continue to kind of get back and ready for the Olympics. But also getting Kevin Durant back from injury is going to be an important part for Team USA as well.
Yeah, the NBA players that are of note on Serbia, clearly Nikola Jovic, Micic from the Hornets, and Bogdan Bogdanovic from the Atlanta Hawks. So those are the players that you'll see that could pose problems, obviously, especially with international rules. It's still always going to be a thing that when USA basketball plays, there are nuances to the game that I just think they're at a disadvantage when it comes to that kind of play, goaltending rules and whatever else. For the Group C that they will be in 10 days when the Olympics starts, USA minus 1,400, Serbia plus 680, South Sudan plus 4,000, Puerto Rico plus 6,500. For those Group C odds, I'd imagine that we'll get out of the group stage, Gil. But today the spread is 14.5 with a total of 176.5. Let's move over to the NBA, where we have the Lakers adding Lindsey Harding to the coaching staff, another female basketball coach added to an NBA staff. Good news for the Lakers, and she has a tie to J.J. Redick. She was on the Sixers coaching staff when J.J. Redick was playing there, correct?
Correct. And, you know, it pains me to acknowledge this as well, but they are both proud Duke Blue Devils as well. And they're two of the biggest names to play basketball at Duke. And Lindsey Harding is a coach who is really making a meteoric rise up the ranks on the men's side of coaching. And I think that, you know, she has a very good chance to be the first female head coach in the WNBA. That's how good of a coach she is. That's how good of a job she did last year with the Stockton Kings, the G League affiliate of the Sacramento Kings. So it's a great move from her to go from Stockton to go to LA to work with JJ Redick. I think her player development is going to be a big key in this Lakers team because they're relying on a lot of young guys on that roster having bigger roles than people probably anticipated them having because they struck out on so many free agents this offseason. So she could very well be the most important person on the Lakers bench this year.
Harding joins Nate McMillan, Scotty Brooks, and Greg St. John on the Lakers staff this season. And for those that don't know, Gil is a proud Wake Forest alum, so Tobacco Road tension runs deep even on this program. Lakers playing the Hawks in Summer League. 2.5-point favorites are the Hawks. 172.5 is the total. Obviously, it's going to be a storyline every time he takes the court about Bronny James and his performance. At present, his stats are not looking good. 5 points a game, 21% from the field, 0 for 15 from 3, and turning the ball over 2.5 times a game. I don't love the fact, Gil, that Bronny is in this position because people are trying to make a punching bag out of him. I don't think it's fair to him, anything that's going on. But what is your thoughts as we approach them having to make roster decisions? What do they do with Bronny?
I think it's a long-term project. I think they knew that coming into it. I'm sure that the Lakers organization would want to see more from him. I think he's been struggling and he's kind of in a shooting slump at the worst possible time. I think with that shot is falling, I think he'd be a little more confident, a little more sure of himself on the offensive end. But it's important to remember that he's still less than a year removed from that cardiac arrest incident last year at USC. So here's a player who's been through a lot as a person this past year, and the fact that he is where he is right now, I think he deserves a little of our patience, but it has been tough for him. And I know that he's facing a lot of expectations and a lot of pressure given his name, given his opportunity. But, knowing anybody who's been under a lot of scrutiny and a big spotlight throughout their life, I think he is definitely built and has a system around him to at least handle it and kind of persevere through this right now.
A lot of change going on with the Lakers, obviously, this offseason. They've lost free agents. They bring in a new head coach. They've got the Bronny storyline constantly around them, and they've obviously have a new coach to the staff in Lindsey Harding. So great stuff, as always, from Gil McGregor. He'll be with us all throughout the Olympics in order to track how USA Basketball is doing with those rotations, if they have any real threats within the tournament and beyond. NBA Summer League has been entertaining thus far. I think it's always a good shot to take a look at some of those rookie players and see how they can do in the flow of an NBA-style game. Good stuff from Gil McGregor. We'll be back with more on NewsWire right after this.
One of the many exciting things about joining Live was being able to come here and play in front of a Spanish crowd, especially on a level of event and level of competition that I hadn't really yet enjoyed, right? I've been able to play events in Spain.
Here in the beautiful Valderrama, which some say is the European Augusta. It's so special. There's so much history here. There's so much Spanish history here.
Well, it has so much history behind. It's only a 50 years old club, but so much has happened through the years. I mean, we had the Ryder Cup, we had World Gold Championships, and now we have Live. It's
very exciting, and really, if there was ever a place to get my first win, I feel like this would be the perfect week.
When this windy, this golf course is so difficult that it's equally stressful no matter when or where you're playing it. But it was fun. It's always fun to be back home and be with the home crowd. It's always a joy to have this many people supporting me all day. It's so much fun.
What the heck course were you playing today?
I don't know.
It's brutal out there.
It is brutal. I don't know. I just made everything I looked at, Jerry. You have those days. I suppose this was one of those days for me, so I relish it. I really enjoyed it. Every time I stood over a putt, just felt like I could make it, and you don't get days like that too often, or certainly I don't. So I relished in it, and I managed to hit a lot of good shots as well. So it was a special day.
Welcome back to NewsWire. It's now time for the SportsGrid Sound Off. We highlighted a story yesterday on James Dolan, the chairman of the New York Knicks, and exactly how he feels about the NBA's revenue share plan. Our own Scott Farrell had to comment on it as well.
I agree with him. I think he's right that it's copycat. This Silver guy wants to be the NFL. That's why he does all these things like this. This deal is very similar to the NFL deals and the revenue sharing. Everybody gets, like you said, one size fits all, whereas you know what they do in New York and Boston and Philly and what markets like Sacramento do and San Antonio do, even if they have Wembanyama, what they do in Phoenix. I'm sorry, what they do in Cleveland, what they do in Orlando. I could go on and on. I don't see why it makes sense that they all get the same amount. I agree with him. I think they should get more. They make more money for the league. They deserve more money. They shouldn't be giving everyone else out the same amount of money as those heavyweights. It's as simple as that. People argue all the time with us on this show and on social media about my affinity for large markets. Well, that's because I'm right.
I would need a little bit more time to respond to that, but I would say that I don't entirely agree with Scott or Jim Dolan. But if I have time at the end of the segment, I'll respond. But I want to get to Ben Stevens talking about Alabama and their upcoming transitional season after Nick Saban.
SEC Media Day is underway in Dallas this week, and for the first time in nearly 2 decades, Nick Saban isn't there as the head coach for the Alabama Crimson Tide. It is a new era in Tuscaloosa. Kalen DeBoer will meet with the media this week in the Lone Star State, projecting his first year as the new head man of the Crimson Tide program. And from the odds perspective, when you look at Alabama, things might look different this year. 9.5 the win total for Bama, and the under has the juice. Is Alabama going to have a college football season where they win less than double-digit games? The odds makers expect that. The last time Alabama won less than 10 regular season games was way back in 2010. That was Nick Saban's 4th year in Tuscaloosa. The Crimson Tide also not the favorite to win the SEC, but still the 3rd best number at a plus 700 price. Blewitt, back to you.
Tough times that Alabama might not win 10 games. We'll see how DeBoer does. Obviously, it's still a very loaded roster. He's a highly capable coach, but it will be interesting to see the fact that they are not ushered in as one of the favorites in the conference yet again. Georgia still at the top. We got one more here with Craig Mish. A potential MLB rule change might take a while to get to us, but Craig comments here on a potential rule change in MLB.
Hey, what's going on? Craig Mish at the All-Star Game in Arlington, Texas. And now that the game is behind us, the big news from the All-Star Game is that in spring training in 2026, it looks like we're going to see some form of robot umpires, which apparently could lead to them using the system in 2026. So think about that going into next year. All of a sudden we get the announcement from the commissioner, Rob Manfred, and instead of a full robot umpire system, it's more of a challenge system, which basically means you get a certain amount per game, just like you do outs on the field. So I got to tell you, I'm very much looking forward to that. And, of course, I'm looking forward to the second half of the Major League Baseball system and being back with you guys on NewsWire on Thursday. So until then, I'll see you then. Back to you.
Good stuff. Look at that. Live on the scene, Craig Mish. A little loud in the background, but appreciate him giving us some news. So we will potentially see, obviously, automated strike calls have long been a topic of discussion. Challenges on strike calls now a possibility, but we'll take some time to get it tested and get it right. I don't mind that they're taking their time to get it right. I've talked certainly about NFL rule changes and other things, and I just wish they would be. It'd be nice if they were quicker about it, but it's understandable why they have to take the time in order to get something like this right, to make sure it's a smoother process once it's enacted. I don't have time to respond to Scott and Jim Dolan as a team on small market media versus big market media. Maybe at the end of the show, but when we come back, Jim Gazzale from Legal Sports Report will be with us.
one of the many exciting things about joining Live was being able to come here and play in front of a Spanish crowd, especially on a level of event and level of competition that I hadn't really yet enjoyed, right? I've been able to play events in Spain.
You're in the beautiful Valderrama, which some say is the European Augusta. It's so special. There's so much history here. There's so much Spanish history here.
Well, it has so much history behind. It's only a 50-year-old club, but so much has happened through the years. I mean, we had the Ryder Cup, we had World Gold Championships, and now we have Live.
It's very exciting, and really, if there was ever a place to get my first win, I feel like this would be the perfect week.
I feel like when this wind in this golf course is so difficult that it's equally stressful no matter when or where you're playing it. But it was fun. It's always fun to be back home and be with the home crowd. It's always a joy to have this many people supporting me all day. It's so much fun.
What the heck course were you playing today?
I don't know.
It's brutal out there.
It is brutal. I don't know. I just made everything I looked at, Jerry. You have those days. I suppose this is one of those days for me, so I really shouldn't. I really enjoyed it. Every time I stood over a putt, just felt like I could make it, and you don't get days like that too often, or certainly I don't. So yeah, I relished in it, and I managed to hit a lot of good shots as well. So it was a special day.
Back on NewsWire, welcoming in Jim Gazzale from Legal Sports Report. He's sports betting and horse racing business news is what he covers. And we'll start off with sports betting news in the state of Tennessee. According to your tweet just yesterday, sports betting tax collectors in the state approached $87.6 million for fiscal year 24. That's up $4 million. And this is the initial 12-month period with Tennessee sportsbooks taxed 1.85% on handle rather than on gross revenue. You say in this tweet that Tennessee is the only state with a handle tax. Can you explain why they have it versus other states not having it?
Yes, certainly, Mike. And they are unique in the sense that they are the only state that applies a tax on the overall betting volume in the state, as opposed to every other legal jurisdiction that applies a tax to the revenue that the sports books make each month. So this was a change that happened a little over a year ago, and like I mentioned in that tweet, we did see this first 12-month period of this handle tax generate about $4 million extra in tax collections for fiscal year 2024 compared to the prior fiscal year in Tennessee. And a variety of reasons, I think, why this handle tax came to be. And the main one was when they legalized sports betting in Tennessee, the law and the regulators put in place a minimum 10% hold for the sports books. So the sports books had to win essentially at least 10% of all the money that was bet. And by requiring that, it would essentially, have regulators and state government in Tennessee be able to accurately forecast their fiscal projections. The problem with that is holding 10% is quite challenging. A lot of times we see the average hold across multiple jurisdictions falling below that 10% on a monthly basis. So in Tennessee, in addition to that minimum 10% hold requirement, which has now gone away as they transition to that handle tax, included with that minimum hold requirement was a level of fines that were passed down to the sports books if they did not meet that requirement. And that proved to be a little bit of a failure in Tennessee, which is why we did see that 1.85% tax on handle as opposed to a tax on gross revenue like we see elsewhere. I think the taxes in the sports betting industry is an interesting topic. You have New York with their 51% tax, which a lot of the sports books do still grovel about. We've seen in recent months, Ohio doubled their tax rate from 10% to 20% on gross revenue for operators. Illinois just increased their tax rate. New Jersey is talking about it as well. So proving and paying off some dividends in Tennessee, applying that handle tax as opposed to revenue, but still the only state in the country to do that, apply that tax in that way, Mike.
Yeah, like you said, it is an interesting topic. New York famously with a very high tax rate, and operators have complained that it is impossible for them to get profitable in the state of New York paying that level of tax rate. But I don't know how much leverage they're ever going to have against the state government, A, and B, it is not a market that they can relinquish at any point, right? It's too important in terms of the volume of betting and for image marketing purposes to be active in New York. Moving over to the state of Kansas, DraftKings earned additional Kansas sports betting market share in June. They went from 46% to 49%. Is there any event related to that allowed them to increase their volume within the state? Or are they just doing better than the competition? Is this a sign of things outside of Kansas as well?
Yeah, it's tough to really pinpoint one specific event. Really, in a lot of these states, as we get into the thinner parts of the sports betting calendar in the summer months, and in a smaller market like Kansas, things tend to be a bit volatile from month to month. Though DraftKings grabbing a couple of extra percentage points in June in terms of overall handle compared to May, I thought was at least a little bit interesting. Like I said, as we get into the summer months where there just isn't a ton of extra things to be wagering on. So $66.2 million for DraftKings handle in Kansas in June, and that was about half of all the dollars bet in Kansas for the month, and DraftKings has been pretty steady at number one in that market. So not terribly shocking that they were able to boost their market share a little bit, but a couple of percentage points higher than May I thought was at least interesting when there's not too much to glean from monthly reports in those summer months. Like I said, Caesars in Kansas also was able to have a few points extra, moving from 4.4% of overall handle to up to 4.4% in June from 4.2% in May, with $6 million in June handle in Kansas.
So like Jim said, if those numbers remain consistent, clearly those two operators would love to see that continue into the fall and August and September when football is with us and the volume goes up. So let's move over to the track. Opening weekend stats from Saratoga year over year. You have an interesting year over year comparison, and it seems like it's up across the board, particularly when you go down to the stat from your tweet all the way at the bottom. A daily average saw a nearly 20% increase from 20.6 million to 24.4 million. So good news for Saratoga. That's a really significant year-over-year increase when you compare percentages.
Yeah, for sure, Mike. And I think it was a pretty positive opening weekend, which the racing season up here began on Thursday. So 4 days, Thursday through Sunday, like you said, 18% year over year. And what I think, kind of stuck out to me was that the on-track handle was pretty flat, up only a couple $100,000 in the grand scheme of things. And walking around the track for a couple of days this weekend, I did see on Sunday when I was up there, relatively lightly attended. You could move around rather freely, which was in a stark contrast to Belmont Stakes weekend up here back in June, when everybody was kind of crammed in like sardines, and it was kind of tough to move around in person at the track during that busy weekend. But overall, I think the executives from NYRA that I've been speaking to over the last couple of days were pretty pleased with what they've seen, and a lot of it too has to do with the weather. A lot of times when it rains, they have to pull races off of the turf, which then results in a lot of horses being scratched from those races. So, in a race that you might have 10 or 12 different betting interests, that comes off the turf, and then you're, and oftentimes left with 4 or 5 or 6, sometimes if we're lucky, betting interests, which certainly affects the handle. So good weather, good action up at Saratoga to kick off the meet, and another 5 weeks to go. So we'll see how that progresses here throughout the rest of the summer. But all things considered, off to a pretty solid start here at Saratoga.
Great stuff, as always, from Jim Gazzale. You can follow him on Twitter at Jim Gazzale. He's from the Legal Sports Report, covering sports betting and horse racing news. Good to be with you, Jim. We'll have Warren Sharp next on NewsWire.
One of the many exciting things about joining Live was being able to come here and play in front of a Spanish crowd, especially on a level of event and level of competition that I hadn't really yet enjoyed. Right, I've been able to play events in Spain.
Here in the beautiful Valderrama, which some say is the European Augusta. It's so special. There's so much history here. There's so much Spanish history here.
Well, it has so much history behind. It's only a 50-year-old club, but so much has happened through the years. I mean, we had the Ryder Cup, we had World Gold Championships, and now we have Liv. It's
very exciting, and really, if there was ever a place to get my first win, I feel like this would be the perfect week.
This wind at this golf course is so difficult that it's equally stressful no matter when or where you're playing it. But it was fun. It's always fun to be back home and be with the home crowd. It's always a joy to have this many people supporting me all day. It's so much fun.
What the heck course were you playing today?
I don't know.
It's brutal out there.
It is brutal. I don't know. I just made everything I looked at, Jerry. You have those days. I suppose this was one of those days for me, so I relished in it. I really enjoyed it. Every time I stood over a putt, just felt like I could make it, and you don't get days like that too often, or certainly I don't. So I relished in it, and I managed to hit a lot of good shots as well. So it was a special day.
We are back on NewsWire, welcoming in Warren Sharp. You find him on x.com at Sharp Football. Lots to talk about as training camps are underway. We had 6 teams, rookies show up yesterday, Warren. So getting a little bit closer, inching closer to when veterans start to report and we really get these conversations underway. But I wanted to talk about the NFC East with you. It is a division that, of all the quirky stats in the NFL, one of the ones that remains true season over season. And we have not had a repeat winner in this division since 03-04. We just keep rotating it 18, 19 years in a row now. What are the expectations that maybe we get a repeat winner this time around? It looked like we were going to have it last year, and then the Philly collapse made it not so. So do you like a repeat winner this season?
I don't. In fact, I bet some nice odds. I got like plus 230. I think you could still get plus 180 on it for the Philadelphia Eagles to finish in first place in the NFC East and the Dallas Cowboys to finish in second place. Some books have the 1-2 exacta offering. I think that the Philadelphia Eagles are more poised. I think one of the biggest problems for the Philadelphia Eagles last year, although, record-wise, I wrote a lot about this in my book, about how their season started compared to the 2022 season when they went to the Super Bowl. Both teams started 10-1. You say, hey, these teams are both on the right trajectory, same trajectory. Last year's Philadelphia Eagles looked almost nothing like the 2022 version. 2022 version, when I ran back my numbers on that team, you actually had to, like as we were analyzing the Super Bowl, when we were out in Arizona, I believe, we had to strip away their fourth quarters because they were leading by so many points through the first half and through the third quarter that they were just running the ball, doing nothing in the fourth quarter. So their stats looked like, oh, this team's a pretty run first team. But when in reality, they were a pass first team that was aggressively trying to build leads. They jumped out on opponents early. The 2023 version, last year's version of the Philadelphia Eagles, did not do that whatsoever. In fact, they were trailing more at halftime. They had to come back. They had to play all 4 quarters of games far more frequently last season. And one of the reasons, in my opinion, was their coordinators. Their coordinators, they lost both of them after they went to the Super Bowl. And so they replaced them in-house last season. Last season, those coordinators on offense and on defense did not do a very good job whatsoever. And so this year they went mercenary style. They went outside the building and brought in 2 hired guns. We're going to have a much more aggressive Philadelphia Eagles team this upcoming year, I think, on both sides of the football. And then Howie does what Howie does. He brought in some talent. He's got some better players there. They're a little bit more balanced. They have at least from a namesake, a stronger run game, a stronger run focus with Saquon Barkley there in the backfield to give that added threat. And this is a team that should be able to have better success. I think Jalen Hurts was a little bit banged up last year as well. So he's a little bit healthier, and they're just more improved at all levels of pretty much their entire roster, with one glaring exception, and that is along the offensive line where they lost Jason Kelce. And Jason Kelce was a huge part of that tush push, which I ran numbers on that. And the tush push alone, on 4th and 1, there were 97 plays where Jalen Hurts snuck the football over the last 3 seasons. Those 97 plays accounted for more rushing EPA with those 97 than every single other team's entire rushing attack over the last 3 years. That's how efficient that play was for the Philadelphia Eagles. If they can get something close to that without Jason Kelce, they'll probably be fine. If that drops off a tremendous amount because Jason Kelce's not there at that spearhead of that tush push along the offensive line, then they could step back there and they're going to have to figure out other ways. But I still think that they are going to win the NFC East because I think the Dallas Cowboys are just a little bit too fragile from a roster build perspective. I don't think they have the depth. I don't think they have the talent as spread out as much. And then we could talk about their defense if you want to, Mike, or if we need to move on. But their defense, they lost their defense coordinator, and they thrived so much on all these takeaways that I don't know if they're going to be able to get those this season. 3 straight years where they were plus 10 in turnover margin or better. That's happened only 8 times in the last 2 decades where a team has gone 3 straight years at plus 10 turnover margin or better. And none of those teams had a double-digit positive turnover margin in that 4th season. And in fact, the average was only plus 4. So if you take away 6 turnover margin difference from the Dallas Cowboys, there's no way they're winning the same number of games in 2024.
Yeah, fair to say. By the way, Eagles right now, minus 134 on FanDuel to go over 10.5 wins. The Cowboys set at 9.5, minus 166. Keep in mind, Cowboys are an extremely public team. You can't always just look at what the juice looks like, what the number looks like from day to day. I wanted to focus on your favorite team in the NFL. That's the New York Giants, returning Daniel Jones and Brian Dable and Joe Shane, your favorite triumvirate of NFL personalities. Their win total at 6.5. It's being bet to the under, minus 140. Under 6.5 wins. Do you think they have any chance to get to 7, Warren?
The challenge is their schedule and that offensive line. I mean, that offensive line must do a better job, but it's also Daniel Jones recovering from that ACL. How healthy is he going to be in 2024? And then how frequently is he going to take these sacks? Because this team, their sack margin last year was minus 51. Which is the most in any year that I've tracked. There was no other team that was worse than minus 41 since 2000, as far back as I can go. They have to figure out a way to reduce the pressure on Daniel Jones and reduce the number of sacks that he's taking. This is not just on the offensive line. This is also on Daniel Jones himself. And my fear is that with this ACL injury that he's recovering from, he's not going to be able to get the ball quite as quickly, move around quite as adeptly all throughout the course of the season. That's the only fear that I have with the New York Giants. The roster isn't great. The Washington Commanders have a new quarterback, a new head coach. They're ascending a little bit more. I think the Giants are going to be better than they were last year, but that's not saying much. But that being said, I still think that they've got a lot of work to do in a very competitive NFC East.
Lots of coordinator changes. Warren mentioned both Vic Fangio, Kellen Moore are new. The Giants have a new defensive coordinator. The Cowboys have a new defensive coordinator, and Washington changed everybody. So coaching changes are something to watch in this division. You'll find Warren here all the time on the grid, but go find his NFL preview, chock full of information that you'll need for the 2024 season. Warren, thanks for being on. We'll see you again soon.
One of the many exciting things about joining Live was being able to come here and play in front of a Spanish crowd, especially on a level of event and level of competition that I hadn't really yet enjoyed. Right, I've been able to play events in Spain.
Here in the beautiful Valderrama, which some say is the European Augusta. It's so special. There's so much history here. There's so much Spanish history here.
Well, it has so much history behind. It's only a 50 years old club, but so much has happened through the years. I mean, we had the Ryder Cup, we had World Gold Championships, and now we have Live. It's
very exciting, and really, if there was ever a place to get my first win, I feel like this would be the perfect week.
This windy, this golf course is so difficult that it's equally stressful no matter when or where you're playing it. But it was fun. It's always fun to be back home and be with the home crowd. It's always a joy to have this many people supporting me all day. It's so much fun.
What the heck course were you playing today?
I don't know.
It's brutal out there.
It is brutal. I don't know. I just made everything I looked at, Jerry. You have those days. I suppose this was one of those days for me, so I relish it. I really enjoyed it. Every time I stood over a putt, just felt like I could make it, and you don't get days like that too often, or certainly I don't. So I relished in it, and I managed to hit a lot of good shots as well. So it was a special day.
Thanks, everybody, for watching NewsWire today and allowing me to entertain you for the last hour with Craig Mish, off enjoying the MLB All-Star break. Not really a break for him, but enjoying the All-Star festivities down at Globe Life Field. Good game last night. Quick paced and had a couple of homers and big hits in the game. Shohei Ohtani, star amongst stars, but Jarren Duran at 200-1 pulls down the All-Star Game MVP. Thanks to Frank Bartunik for producing today, Anthony Saccone on graphics, and Luke Kane, our technical director. And as always, thanking our guests as well. Warren Sharp just talked with us about football. Gilbert McGregor on hoops, Olympic, and on the Lakers, ever-growing story. And then Jim Gazzale talking about sports betting news. So appreciate it. Craig will be back tomorrow. But before that, let's get in our last licks. All right, so a little bit on the fashion game. Ellie De La Cruz, a cool moment last night. He sits down to interview with Kevin Burkhardt and the staff on Fox, and he just organically mentions that his favorite player growing up was Derek Jeter. And guess who was sitting there but Derek Jeter? It was a really nice exchange, honest and genuine, and it was a cool moment for both of them, I think. And here's his cleats. Check out these cleats. Louis Vuitton Jordan cleats for the All-Star game last night. I mean, maybe I could pull those things off. I'll talk to Frank after the show, see if he thinks I can pull those off. Maybe I get some pink Louis Vuitton Jordan cleats or sneakers. All right, he says no in my ear, so I tried. I'm aging, but I don't want to lose my fashion sense. So next up is the Red Sox drafting D'Angelo Ortiz, the son of David Ortiz. So heroics by Ortiz all during his Red Sox career. They want to keep the vibes going. D'Angelo Ortiz drafted by the Red Sox as he tries to make his way to Major League Baseball. And then finally, Texas new to the SEC, but what's not new is the horns down gesture that everybody likes to flash. Texas fans don't like it being flashed, and the Big 12 used to penalize teams and players for doing such. Greg Sankey says, let's have fun with it. Horns down is good to go. As you can see, College Football Report says it just means more. So whether it's Oklahoma or Alabama or LSU or whoever has an opportunity to play them in the years ahead, you can see some horns down gestures when Texas comes into town. So that's it for our last licks. I would go back. I just have about a couple of minutes here. Scott Farrell and I are good friends, so he knows that I would just have a healthy debate about this. I understand that the big market teams could conceivably be entitled to more, but there is a good reason that Adam Silver and the NBA are moving towards the NFL's style of doing business when it comes to, at least to media rights deals for now, and perhaps beyond that. There has been a growing trend of RSNs, regional sports networks, and local TV collapsing upon itself. And the most stable partners you can find are in the national media space in the manner that the NBA is partnering with them. ESPN, that has a linear network and a streaming network to support it. NBC, linear network, and Peacock, their streaming platform, to support it. Amazon is the wealthiest company amongst the most wealthy companies in the entire world. They do not want teams to have to struggle with regional sports networks the way they have recently. He mentioned the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns had to scrap their previous media landscape, which was reliant on a Bally's regional sports network that totally collapsed and stopped paying them. So they went to an over-the-air network as well as a subscription service so that people would have the ability just to watch the games. The NBA doesn't want people to have to struggle to watch games, and this is part of the deal. So Jim Dolan can go cry in his office for all I care. I'd have a healthy debate about it, and I think I would be right. This is the way to move, and Silver knows that's the way to move. They're going to be stable on the national scale, and it will help the smaller market teams to sustain their media presence with their fans in a better way, in a more efficient way. So that's what I have to say about that. I could obviously talk about it for hours, but I don't have hours. Coming up next on the show. We'll have Scott Farrell Coast to Coast comes up at 3 o'clock Eastern. Game time decisions in game live and Sports Rage. Keep it locked here on the grid. Thanks, everybody.